Good evening, folks. Welcome back to Threes In. Bobo here. So, I really enjoy reading your comments when you take time to put them on a video. And it's almost like I'm sitting in Threes In, because that's the way the stories began flowing. Somebody would tell a story, and then a couple guys would comment on it, and then somebody would pick up an aspect of that story, and the thread would take off. So I really enjoy it when you take time to put a comment, and it just stimulates other thoughts. So we're in a thread that's brought up students, if you will. I mean, that's the nature of pilot training, our students and instructor pilots. And a couple thoughts came to mind about that. I really enjoyed coming back to the T-38 when I came back from Southeast Asia. I was in rescue C-130s at the time, and then I came back to Vance. And when you go through PIT, they give you just enough skills, if you will. They develop your skill set to keep you alive. And they tell you you're going to learn more in the first couple of years, actually the first 6 months being on the line, than we could ever hope to teach you down here at PIT. And there's a lot of truth in that. So what I want to do is take a couple minutes here and give you share a couple of my experiences with that thought. When I showed up back at Vance as a fully qualified IP, I was assigned 3 students. And when I looked at these 3, I considered them the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I don't mean to be condescending with that. The good really was, actually on a good day, he could be very good, but overall he was a solid student. The bad was a good guy, and probably the guy I enjoyed flying with the most, because flying didn't come natural to him. He had to really work at it. And my gosh, he did work, and it was just a thrill to watch him come along. And then the bad had the skill set to be a pilot. He had been an art major in college. His dad was an F-4 wing commander, and his uncle was engaged in the game somehow or another. And they wanted him to be a pilot, but he wanted to be an artist. So he was a little bit conflicted as he's going through the program. And I used to tell people there were days when he showed up to fly with me, and I didn't know whether I was going airborne with Steve Canyon or Picasso. But sometimes I'd find out really quick. At any rate, the good showed me a lot of fun flying with a good student. I mean, he was always well prepared and highly motivated. Just like I said, a joy to fly with. He also was the first one that damn near killed me. He was coming in on a no flap. And I've covered this in a prior video, but he was coming in on a no flap, and I'm sitting back there. This was late in the program. It was one of those contact rides we go up just for currency in the middle of formation. Anyway, so we're coming in on this no flap, and I'm sitting back just admiring my work because he was doing so well. And I'm sitting back in the back cockpit, got my arms up on the rails like they tell us not to do, and I'm just admiring my work because this kid is good. And we're coming in, and I'm sitting there watching as we come into the overrun, and he starts the nose coming up, and I thought, okay, he's not done this before. And I said, he'll catch it though, because I've taught him. Well, no, nose kept coming up higher, and he started getting into a little sink rate, and well, come on, and finally I couldn't stand it anymore. I've got the aircraft, and just as I said, that airplane rolled like that. And we went by the RSU. The guy in the RSU was screaming, so-and-so go around, use burners. And I said, I am. Anyway, I don't know how I recovered that airplane that day. I was on autopilot, if you will. Anyway, I got it right side up, the burners caught, and we flew out of it. Later, that morning, the RSU controller came up to my desk. Like I said, I was relatively new to the game. He came up to my desk, stood there for a minute, and I knew he was a senior captain in the squadron. So I stood up, I'd not met him, and I said, Bob Holliker. He said, oh, I know who you are. I said, can I help you with anything? He said, well, he said, I just came down to shake your hand. He says, I've never shook hands with a dead man before. And I looked at him, kind of, yeah, what do you mean by that? And he said, well, Bob, and he said, come on over here. So we walked over aside, and he said, you let him go way too far. He said, when you went by the RSU, I looked up into your canopy, and I saw your knee pad. And he said, that is just way too far. And then the more I got to thinking about it, then I got a chill down my back. Never let a student go that far ever again. The bad was one of these students. His learning curve was a little bit lower than what the program had in mind, but he worked. He just worked and worked and worked, and he never quit. And that was inspiring, just to watch that kid progress through the program. Then the ugly, like I said, he was on days that he decided he wanted to fly, he was pretty darn good. But on other days that he wanted to be an artist, he could be hell to pay. And he was one of those kind of guys, he was always wanting to run a scam on you. And I learned about students who like to run scams. We were flying a single engine approach one morning, late in the morning, about 11 o'clock or so. And as we were coming into the center runway there at Vance, he got about 8 knots slow on a simulated single engine. And I don't know if I took the airplane on that first approach. I said airspeed, and he added the power, and we got back to final approach airspeed and then completed the approach and touch and go. Anyway, we got back to the flight room, and I said to him, okay, on single engine approach, that's going to be a fair today because you let the airspeed get a little bit too slow. And he cocked his head and he looked at me and I said, are you sure that was me? Well, if you've been in the instructing business and you're flying 2-3 times a day, there comes those days when, no, I'm not sure it was you. I think it was. And, that really troubled me. So I gave him the benefit of the doubt. It was in the part of the program it really wouldn't make a difference whether they got a fair or a good. And, okay, fine. So the next day or a couple days later, whenever it was, we went up again and we're doing a simulated single engine. And sure enough, he got 8 knots slow again, 8 or 10 knots slow, whatever it was on final. And I said, all right, Lieutenant so-and-so. I said, take a look at your airspeed. I said, you are 8 knots slow today. I said, when we get to the debrief, I don't want you to act stupid when you get your fare. Now get your airspeed back and let's complete the deal. So we did. He later washed out and went to greener pastures, I guess. But like I said, I rarely went airborne without learning something from a student. And that was, sometimes it was fun, sometimes it was terrifying. I want to come back to the bad a moment. I remembered an incident that we had. So we're doing his initial takeoff in the T-38. Beautiful morning, taking off 17 center. So at Vance. So we line up and run through all the nursery rhymes, RPM, EGT, nozzles, fuel flow, oil pressure, around the horn. You ready to go, sir? Oh, absolutely. So he gets airborne, and you can hear the breathing on their first takeoff. So, and it's like you don't need to. Anyway, so we go down the runway, get airborne gear and flaps, and we're just smoking south, accelerating through 300 and then 350 and then 400. And I got to thinking, I wonder how fast this bad boy will go before we figure it out. He forgot to pull him out of burner. In tweets, they don't have afterburners, so you don't have to worry about it. But we went by Wacomas, Oklahoma, about 5 miles south, going about 520, maybe, whatever it was. And I thought, that's pretty fast. So I said, all right, Ty, I said, I don't want you to get too much more excited, but let's pull him out of burner and start to climb. And up we went. But that was a lot of fun. Now, take the clock and wind it forward to my last flight with a student in the Air Force. It was on in July 15th, 1988. I had a Finney flight scheduled for later that afternoon, and there was something in my soul that made me want to fly a student sortie before I went up on a Finney flight, because that was my job. And I wanted to be one of those kind of guys that said, I did my job the last day I was in the Air Force. I flew a student sortie. So I get this kid, nice guy, we're briefing up, and he's a young second lieutenant. I'm a lieutenant colonel, and he knew it was my last flight with a student, or this was my last day or something. I guess he was a little bit nervous. I wasn't. But anyway, we get out on the runway there at Randolph and took off. And Lord and behold, he forgets to raise the gear. Good God. Now, my last student sortie, you think I'm going to pink the kid on my last ride? No. I just took the airplane. I said, okay, when a student goes to over G the jet, I said, or over speed, this is what you do. And I pulled the thing up and I pulled the throttles back. It killed the airspeed. Kept it below 240, got the gear. I said, I don't know. Anyway, I said, okay, you got the airplane back. Let's go finish the ride. So again, I learned something on my last flight. You just can't be complacent. You can't sit back there and ever relax, if you will. There are sometimes you can, but by gosh, it is creep up and bite you when you least expect it. And then in between my first 3 students I flew with and the last guy I flew with, all kinds of students with all kinds of things they wanted to teach me, and I learned quite a bit. I learned the last thing I'll talk to you about that I learned. I didn't like flying with smartasses. I just didn't like that. I flew with this one kid. He was a tanker pilot coming back to command to be a T-38 IP, a KC-135 pilot. And it was one of those kind of guys you really couldn't tell him anything. And so as I was going to offer something, well, sir, I was just about to do this, or well, sir, I was going to do that. Or so I say, hey, Mike, you might think, well, I was just going to do that. That gets old after a while. I was just going to do that. Well, if you were just going to do that, why do you think I had to wait this long to say something to you? I was just going to do that. Anyway, so we got cleared for a recovery advance, and we had a choice, or at Randolph, we had a choice. We either climb up a little bit and do the high altitude penetration to the recovery, or we could have dropped out the bottom of the area and picked up the recovery point that way. We had enough gas to do either one. Anyway, at the high point, there was a little bit of cloud up there, and you could see that there was rain up there, rain showers. It wasn't like a big gray cloud. It was just kind of wispy stuff. And I said, it's up to you, but I said, we got clear skies down there on the low recovery, and I said, we got to backtrack out of the area, climb up to the recovery point, and I said, got some weather there that's not looking real fun. He said, having flown tankers, I'm not afraid of a little weather like that. No kidding. As soon as he said that, God sent a bolt of lightning through those clouds, and whoa, he turned and we headed downhill for the low recovery. And I said, Mike, or whatever his name was, I said, every now and then, you're going to find out that the IP knows a little bit more than the student does. Not often, okay? I'll give you that. And that kid learned another lesson about grading techniques. When I got down, we're sitting there going through the grade sheet, and it was really annoying me to his demeanor, his attitude. So I said, you know what? When an instructor is trying to talk with you about how to do something or another, I said, don't tell him that I was just about to do that. Maybe you were. I don't know if you were or not. Don't care. The fact is you didn't. And if I let you go to that point, that's way beyond when I think you should have executed whatever it was I was telling you to do. So I said, just acknowledge it and it's fine. There's nothing to it. It doesn't reflect on your heritage or anything else. But I said, this incessant, I was just about to do that. I said, that can just get on your nerves. Now, I'm going to tell you something here that I'm just about to do, and maybe it'll help make my point. I said, up until now, I don't know if you realize it, but I'm just about to pink you, to unsat you for this ride, just because of the continued unsolicited verbal feedback you insist on offering. So I said, maybe when you read this write-up after a while, you understand what I'm saying. And I pinked him. It wasn't a ride that had much consequence one way or the other, but the lesson that left with him is sometimes when an instructor's trying to teach you something, it's probably not a bad idea just to listen, because he's really trying to help you become a better pilot. Well, anyway, that kind of gives you some insight in some of the personalities I flew with. You never knew what you're going to have when you met a new kid, but they were so much fun to work with, and I enjoyed it. So with that in mind, wrap it up. This is Bobo coming to you. Base gear. Stop.